Okay, we're continuing with this book here, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers, and we're doing Wayne Dyer, and then we also got Freeman, Dyson, and a couple quotes about eagles. Okay, first of all, Wayne Dyer, he lived 1940 to 2015. He said, if all you do is follow the herd, you're going to be stepping in poop all day. Yeah, if you just copy other people, you're going to be bored. Healthy habits are learned through practice. Yeah, if you want to have a good habit, you got to force yourself to do it every day for about a month, and then it'll become automatic. If prayer is you talking to God, then intuition is God talking to you. You will see it when you believe it. Now this quote, you will see it when you believe it, it's kind of like the idea, I believe in order that I may understand, been said by some famous Christians, but it's also along the lines, I look at the vegan diet. If you want to know if the vegan diet works, try it for just a couple months. Try it for 3 months. See what happens. You don't have to commit to it for life. Try it for 3 months, see what happens, and then go. Because a lot of people are freaked out about committing to something like that for life, but just try it for 3 months, see if it helps you. Okay, Wayne Dyer continues. Go for it now. The future is promised to no one. Unconditional love is the greatest power on earth. I think there's some truth in that, in the sense that, look how much parents help their children. And that's just because of unconditional love. The most important person in my life was my mother, okay? But my father was super important too. My dad was more important as a good role model. He got me in the habit of reading at a young age and being a hard worker. And he was a good guy. I mean, I did some things I don't agree with his clinical practice. He was kind of conformist, but he was basically a good guy. My whole life, he never once lied to me. He said some stupid stuff, but he never lied. And he did the best he could for his family, so I have a tremendous respect for that. Okay, and he was a great role model in terms of being a hard worker and a studier and a reader. Okay, Wayne Dyer continues. When you have to choose between being right or being nice, just choose nice. I'd agree with that too. Like when you're young, you always feel like you have to say what you have to say. You want to get the last word in, but you learn as you get older, just mellow out and do what's right, what's nice, because that ends up working better in the long run. If you believe it will work, you'll see opportunities. If you believe it won't, you'll see obstacles. Yeah, that's why you have to instill eagerness and confidence in young people so they are willing to make the effort to give it a try. So many people are expecting a miracle instead of being a miracle. Instead of expecting a miracle, try to be a miracle. Okay, that reminds me too, like when I was a freshman, I went on my recruiting trip to Stanford, and this one wrestler I had on his wall, a guy who was an All-American, one of the senior guys, he said, don't ask for an easier life. Don't pray to God for an easier life. Pray to become a stronger person. He says, don't ask for an easier life because you won't get it. Pray to become a stronger person because that is doable. And I thought that was great advice because that's the truth. If it is to be, it is up to me. I used to like that quote too because you have to push yourself. You have to push. Because most people don't push themselves. If you walk into any hospital in the Western world, you will see all these fat, lazy people sitting at the elevator, okay? Whereas, man, I got my backpack full of books, it weighs 25, 30 pounds, and I'm going up the stairs fast, okay? Because I want to get a little stronger, a little bit more fit each day. I'm 61 years old, okay? Because if you don't push yourself, the body is use it or lose it. And if you don't push yourself, you lose it. You have to maintain high standards of fitness and, academic work, clinical work, whatever it is you do. Otherwise, you start slipping and sliding and, into mediocrity, and you don't want that. Okay, attitude is everything, so pick a good one. Yep. There's some truth in that. Again, if you have, it's good to have high goals. Say to yourself, what is the best I could do? And I'm going to aim for that. Because if you're aiming for the best you could do in terms of academic achievement, fitness, corporate or clinical or your job achievement, whatever it is, you'll get the best result you could have gotten. And that's what you want. Versus what a lot of people do, they just try to get by. And if you only try to get by, you'll find yourself stuck in mediocrity. And it's not going to make you happy. You can only focus on a few things. You got to spend about a third of your life asleep. You got to spend a third of your life at a job, and then the other third is where you get to do what you want to some extent. You also got family obligations and stuff. So you want to figure out how to use that time as well as possible so you get the most out of it. Okay, now we're going to do Freeman Dyson. He's like PhD physicist guy. He was born in 1923. The PhD system is the root of evil in academic snobbery. People who have PhDs consider themselves a priesthood. The real inventors usually do not have PhDs. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. There's some college professors that are really great. Usually the old-fashioned traditional ones are the good ones. Okay, most of the modern PhD professors, they stink. I have so many complaints because I tutor a little bit for college students, grad school students, and they're not happy with their professors. Because the professors are not hired by mediocrity. They're hired for, like political reasons. And, they talk about wanting diversity, but good luck finding a traditional Christian conservative amongst them, okay? Somebody who tells the truth. Okay, then Freeman Dyson continues, the PhD system has ruined so many lives. It makes the student focus on one thesis for 2 to 3 years, which is too long for my attention span. Okay, his next quote. We must be careful not to discourage our 12-year-olds by making them waste the best years of their life preparing for examinations. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the school system is totally stupid. I think it is stupid from start to finish, and I say that based on extensive study of it. People think you go to school to learn, but that's not true. If you talk to anybody, just go to any random person, okay? I've asked this question to lots and lots of doctors and other people. I say, what do you remember that you learned from grade school and high school? And almost always they say, nothing. And then they go, well, I remember driver's ed, I remember typing, and then they remember like one teacher or two teachers that were really nice to them and talked to them a little bit. Almost everything else is forgotten, and I think it's designed that way. It's designed to be forgotten. A vocabulary test, what a waste of time that is, okay? Multiple choice tests, a waste of time. These standardized tests are essentially an IQ test to compare people, but the stuff is wasted. Mathematics, nobody needs that mathematics. Like I said, I don't use any math that I didn't know by 3rd grade. So all that other math was pretty much a waste of time. You don't need all the statistics and all this other stuff to read papers. You need to understand who's funding the paper, okay? Is it objectively done? Okay, that's another reason why I think this artificial intelligence is a big joke. Because artificial intelligence, well, actually I'm going to come to that. Freeman Dyson has a quote about that in a moment. Okay, so what I'm saying is, like I sometimes have this dream, if I could live my life over again, what would I do different? I would do everything possible in my power to get away from going to the stupid schools. Everything possible. Because I look back, what would I wish? I wish I learned about the Greeks, the Romans, the Renaissance, the time of the 1800s, okay? I wish that I had taught myself Greek and Latin, and I could read in those languages. I'd like to read in German, maybe in French too. And it's not as difficult to do that as you think. There's lots of real smart people, Thomas Jefferson, Schopenhauer, they could read in numerous languages. And I could have been there. I'm actually pretty good at a lot of languages. And I would have liked to read some of my favorite authors in their own languages, okay? And I would have liked to learn how to draw. I could have illustrated, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Bible. That would have been a fun thing for me to do, and I could easily have done it. So if I had developed those skills from a young age, instead of sitting around in a stupid classroom, staring out the window, wishing I was at recess, wasting my time. Okay, Freeman Dyson continues. Let's see. Science is not a collection of truths. It is a continuous exploration of mysteries. Yeah, you keep on understanding it at a deeper level, asymptotically approaching the truth. And there's an ongoing discussion and exploration of the details and seeing if you get anything beneficial by working a little closer to the exact objective truth as best you can. And that's what makes it fun. The idea that God may be approached and understood through intellectual analysis is a uniquely Christian viewpoint. It is not an accident that modern science grew so rapidly in Christian Europe and left the rest of the world behind. Yeah, anybody who studied the history of science knows it came out of the Catholic Church in Europe. Okay, that's where modern scientific method comes from. That's pretty well studied. If you don't want to read an entire book on the subject, read Rodney Stark's book. Okay. Because, Christianity says man is created in the image of God. God is a creator. Man is like him, so man can be a creator too. God made a rational universe, therefore it can be understood. God wants us to be like him, so it makes sense in that view. And a lot of other religions, they say things like, there is no point to life. Life is too complicated to be understood, or it's pointless. All that nonsense, Maya, all that stuff, and that leads you away from wanting to study and discover things. In other countries, you had no ownership, so anything you invented or discovered would be stolen away from you, so people weren't motivated. That's why if you go to like Soviet Russia or the countries that were under Soviet control in Eastern Europe, so many men were alcoholics, because they had no motivation. They knew that there was nothing that they could achieve. That's also why a lot of modern clinical doctors, MDs, are frustrated, because the system does not allow you to achieve anything. It just says, shut your mouth and generate your billing codes for the day. We don't care about your ideas. We don't care about helping the patients. We just want billing codes. Get your billing codes or we're going to let you go. That's it. There's no creative thinking going on. Okay, Freeman Dyson. If you don't have a nasty obituary, you probably didn't matter, okay, in terms of being a big scientific discoverer. When somebody does something good in the sciences, they get people pissed off at them, because basically the big, money type players, they're controlling things, and they like the system exactly the way it is because they make tons of predictable profit off it. They don't want some new genius coming along and transforming the system, trying to improve it for the pros. No way. They want to keep making their money. Okay, we're going to continue with Freeman Dyson here. He says, I think that artificial intelligence people are making a lot of noise recently, and they're claiming that AI has made such huge progress that we're going to be outstripped by the machines. But I think this is a misconception. The human brain is analog, whereas the machines are digital. They really are different. So I think that the machines can do some wonderful things, but they're not the same as what a brain can do. And I would say that's also the case. For example, I was looking at a brain MRI today, and I'm thinking to myself, it was kind of an easy case, but there were tons and tons of artifacts. And so I spent all my time sorting out, is that real or is that artifact? Is that real or that's artifact? And I thought, that's one thing that's an obstacle to, having machine interpretation of medical stuff. There's often all kinds of problems and artifacts. Things get done wrong. And I think it's going to be hard for an AI machine to do that. The other thing is, people will say, well, AI can search the medical literature faster. And I don't think that's true. I'll tell you why, or the nutrition literature, because most of the medical and the nutrition literature is bogus. So you can't just read the papers and take the conclusions at face value. You have to say to yourself, who is funding this paper? What is the angle on this paper? Who are the researchers? Do they have a habit of exaggerating the benefits of this particular item? Is this paper about understanding objective truth, or is it about playing games? And you'd be amazed. The big corporations, they own the journals, they own the scientists, they decide what gets published. So most of the scientific nutritional literature is nonsense, and that's why you have to know a lot in order to be able to make sense out of it. You can't just take it, and so that's why some artificial intelligence thing is not going to, I don't think it's going to be that good. Okay, he continues. A good scientist is a person with original ideas. Okay, he said the fundamental reason why carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is critically important to biology is because there is so little of it. A field of corn growing in full sunlight in the middle of the day uses up all the carbon dioxide within a meter of the ground within about 5 minutes. So if the air was not constantly stirred by convection currents and wind, the corn would stop growing. Okay, so that's interesting. He thinks it's very beneficial, and he thinks it's good, and he actually wants more of it, he thinks, to grow crops. That's an interesting statement. Okay, here's some quotes. This is what Freeman Dyson says. Here's a quote by, these are quotes about eagles. They just kind of went together in a quick little theme. If you want to fly like an eagle, don't hang around with turkeys. And I would say that's true. If you're trying to achieve something, you want to try to get around people who have achieved it. And if you can't meet them in person, watch their videos on the internet, read their books, but expose yourself to their level of thinking. My classic story, I was a sophomore at Stanford. I got repeat injured. I was going to quit the wrestling team because I was so frustrated with injuries. The head coach didn't like me, wanted to take my scholarship away, but the assistant coach liked me, world and Olympic champion Mark Schultz and his brother Dave Schultz. And Mark Schultz says, Rogers, nothing wrong with you. You just hang around with me. You're going to be fine. And I did. I just hanged around with him and listened to all his stories. He told me about, kicking the crap out of the Russians and all this stuff, in wrestling. And I'm like, wow. My gosh, if he's him and his friends are going around dominating the whole world. I'm like, gee, the least I could do is win the conference tournament. So I got way better once I started hanging around Schultz. I wish I had hung around him from day one as a freshman, but I was too scared. I was a little freshman, He was working with the senior All-American guys. Okay, next quote from Newt Rockne, the old Notre Dame football coach. Leaders are like eagles. Eagles don't flock. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that too. If you want to be top-notch in your field, You got to always be pushing the edge, not sort of hanging around at the water cooler gossiping. You got to be pushing yourself to achieve, to advance, to improve. Erasmus, eagles do not chase flies. And I would go with that one, that you don't want to get dragged into pettiness. You want to focus on your big objectives. And I like the idea of the view of an eagle. It actually kind of reminds me of a Nietzsche quote, that as a person gets more and more advanced, they often become more obscure or distant from the crowd, you know. It's like, you can call me stuck up, but I don't even think other doctors I know are in my ballpark. Most of them are not in the ballpark next to my ballpark. Because I know all these doctors. And they're nice guys and they mean well, but they don't know anything. They don't know much more than a resident does. I'm sorry to be mean, but it's true. They don't know nutrition. They don't know epidemiology. They don't know toxicology. They haven't read about all the things that start with the letter S. And so it's like, and then they know that I'm way ahead of them. I'm like 100 years ahead of all those guys. And I'm like, why aren't you guys curious to read all my books? Well, they don't want me to invite me to lecture because they're afraid. They're afraid, oh, I'll bring in new ideas, controversial ideas, and it kind of makes them look bad because they know they don't know those areas. But I've kind of been amazed at them. Because I got a lot of doctors in my family, too. And most of them are kind of tired. This is pretty typical for a doctor in a Western world. They're tired. They don't want to have to learn a whole bunch of new stuff. They figured out how to make money in their field. And so they really don't care. Okay, so I'm sorry, but, you know, my goal is not to just be mediocre and make money. My goal is to be the best I can be. Okay, next quote from Arthur Schopenhauer. I don't know how that Alfred got in there. Great minds are like eagles, and they build their nests in some lofty solitude. Yeah, and it's also because in academic fields, when you're way ahead of everybody, in sports, if you're way ahead of everybody, they like you, and everybody wants you around, wants to be your friend. But when you're way ahead of other people intellectually, academically, they're jealous of you, they don't like you, they're spiteful, they're passive aggressive to you. It's weird, but you don't get appreciated that much except by the really smartest ones. It's true. And then by the young ones. Young people love being around me because they can learn more in talking to me for an hour than they will in the whole year. Next one, Greek proverb. The old age of an eagle is better than the youth of a sparrow. That one's kind of stupid. But anyways, that's the quotes for today. Hope you found those helpful.